y'all, welcome to another custom figure showcase. Today we're going to be showcasing a realistic version of Captain Rex with his Phase 2 armor. So let's talk about the base figure first. Now, I'm extremely disappointed with this figure. First off, the price point. With shipping and handling straight from the seller, Walmart, it cost me around $40, which is extremely expensive for a single figure. Then I was also really disappointed with the actual figure. The head was very glossy, the body was also kind of glossy, the pauldron was incomplete, the shins were in the opposite feet, and just like a lot of details missing, especially in the back of his head. The helmet was so like awkwardly painted. It had this really awkward white gap between the visor and the wielding lines, so it just looked really off. Even the holsters and belt were unweathered, which just stood out. So I went ahead and fixed him up a little bit and he looks way better. Now, quick disclaimer before I start showing him off. Like, not all of you guys have a 3D printer, and ever since I got a 3D printer, I've started, using it a lot more. I feel like the only difference is just it's a little bit more faster to make customs, because when I didn't have a 3D printer, I just ordered them online, because they're not really too expensive. You can get a pauldron for like $10, $8, $7, but at the same time, I know that not everyone has that type of money just for a little piece of like plastic. So I'm gonna give you a couple different options. I know they might not be completely accurate or the best, but I'm just giving you options if you don't have a 3D printer. So the first option is you can repaint Commander Blythe's pauldron because it's accurate to the Revenge of the Sith version. While it does have like that strap on the side, you can like sand it off or like cut it off, but that's like the first option you can do. You can also use like the Imperial Shock Trooper that we just got. You can use that pauldron, maybe just like add some magazine strips from the original figure. And the last option that I'm like just suggesting over here is you can buy those foam sheets from the dollar store for like $1 a piece probably. Well, not actually, you can get like the multi-pack for like $1, and you can just shape it because it's a fairly simple shape, especially if you have the original Rex figure. You just have to make the pauldron on the side. This is obviously like not painted and not a complete like product, but just an idea. If you don't want to buy a pauldron online, or if you don't want to buy a 3D printer, or if you don't want to repaint anything, you can just like add this little piece of foam and like modify it so it looks a little bit more accurate. Now, the most important thing about this figure, I think, was the matte spray. I don't stress this enough sometimes in my videos, but like the matte coating on a figure is super important. For example, if you spray paint a figure white, like let's say how I did with the Hauser or the Commando, the Republic Commando, I usually add a matte coat afterwards because it like reduces the amount of stickiness in the figure. And like having those like sticky parts is really annoying because you might get fingerprints on your figure and you might kind of ruin it. So the matte coat is super important. I have two brands that I use. The first one that I started using was the Krylon matte one, but honestly it has been really inconsistent. Sometimes I used it and it ended up like just still looking glossy or even more glossier. So it was just very inconsistent for me. And I was using the matte spray, which was very weird. The second one that I use, which is my favorite one, but it's a little bit more expensive for a lot less, and it's the Super Clean one. I use the flat one or the matte one, and that's by far my favorite one. I love the matte finish that it leaves on figures, and it's the one that I've been using the most lately. It's the one that I use for this figure, and it's the one that I'm also planning to use for future projects. Now, just a little side by side here, just to stress how important like the difference is between these, especially if you're doing like toy photography and you want the light to reflect a certain way on the figure. I feel this is like the best way it looks. So on the left we have the original release of the Captain Rex figure, and the armor is super shiny, and it looks kind of inconsistent to how other clones look, like especially the recent release of Echo. Echo looks really matte compared to Rex. So the one on the right, you see that the light like just reflects on it a little bit more softer. It's not so harsh. So I really prefer the one on the right, especially after you give that matte coat on it. You get this really nice texture on the figure. So for what I did with this Captain Rex is, the main thing I did is I boiled and popped the pauldron off, the original one, the incomplete one. After boiling and popping that, I 3D printed a pauldron. And I remember I had to print like 2 other ones just to make sure with the slicing it was like right. For the pauldron, I chose to have like more Revenge of the Sith style version because we already have that old like animated style pauldron, so I wanted to get the realistic one for this guy. So for the main body and the belt, what I did was add a brown/black wash on the figure. After adding that wash, I did the black scratches on the whole armor. I feel this is what really gives I think this is what really sells the figure, and you have to be careful that you don't overdo it. Just those really tiny small like scratches on the raised parts just look so cool. I also had to heat up the comma because when I got it, it was all folded and crunchy and it didn't stand well, so I just heated up with some water and like pressed it down a little bit so it stayed in its place. I unfortunately didn't replace the shins, but I'm planning to do that in the future. I just want to have like a little bit more knowledge on that, like on replacing those leg parts. And I also have to do the opposite numbers on each leg. And with this matte coat, the figure looks so good. Like the head before, it almost looked like translucent, but with the matte coat it really fixes that. And I feel like my biggest gripe with this figure now is that I feel his neck is a little bit too short. It's just like with the helmet you can always see his chin below like his helmet, and it always looks kind of awkward. With the newer figures you got the longer neck, which I feel just rests a little bit better. Now for the helmet, which was a disaster in my opinion before it, when it came in the original packaging, I feel like the printing was misaligned because the gap between the visor and the welded lines was so big that I had to like cover it up with some black paint. And also the part inside the visor, like the black part, had some white parts inside, so I also had to fix that. And it was just like a bunch of fixing that I had to do for this really expensive single figure. So my philosophy on like customizing figures is that I really don't get mad when like Hasbro messes up with something, like when they don't weather a figure, or like when you do like extra little touch-ups on a figure just so it looks a little bit better. I really don't mind when that happens because I like doing that. I like weathering a figure. I like sitting down and like customizing them. So it gives me stuff to do. But with this figure, it was just like they kind of dropped the ball. Also with like the boss figure, the Republic Commando boss figure, they also dropped the ball because it's also going to be like a $35 figure. And if it's so expensive, just give us the accurate, version of the figure. But rant aside, as always, I'm super happy with how this figure came out. And overall, I'm just like staring at the shelf the whole time when he's there. I'm super happy with how it came out, I can't lie. As opposed to like when I opened the figure, I was so disappointed, especially because it's Rex. Like a character that everyone like loves so much, and he just got done dirty. But either way, thank you so much for watching. I have a couple new videos planned for you guys. I have a couple videos that I'm working for you guys, especially with that Droideka figure. I'm super excited to see how it comes out. So thank you so much for supporting. Stay tuned for the next like more in-depth weathering tutorial, and have a beautiful day.